No shooting of a president has been more investigated or analyzed than the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 51 years after the attempt on Teddy Roosevelt's life, JFK was shot twice in an open-top convertible during a motorcade through Dallas, Texas.
For decades, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy remained one of the most haunting enigmas in modern American history. On November 22, 1963, the 35th President of the United States was fatally shot while riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. The Warren Commission's conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone failed to silence public skepticism. Questions lingered, suspicions multiplied, and conspiracy theories flourished, driven by conflicting testimonies, suspicious circumstances, and missing evidence. And now, at long last, a staggering breakthrough has emerged, an irrefutable revelation that not only clarifies the events of that tragic day, but confirms that the doubts and theories swirling for over 60 years were not unfounded fantasies. The JFK mystery has finally been solved, and the solution confirms what many dared only whisper. A conspiracy was at the heart of it all. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The newly declassified material, coupled with digital reconstruction technology and long-buried eyewitness accounts, paints a chilling and astonishingly detailed picture of what transpired on that day in Dallas. It reveals a multifaceted operation orchestrated by individuals embedded within multiple layers of power, spanning intelligence agencies, organized crime, and covert political networks. The assassination, as it turns out, was neither the work of a lone, disaffected gunman nor a spur-of-the-moment act. It was the end result of a calculated and meticulously planned operation designed to eliminate a threat perceived by a confluence of interests. A president whose policies and vision for the future clashed violently with entrenched power structures. What has now been brought to light is the existence of a shadow network operating behind the veil of official authority. This network, often speculated upon but never definitively proven until now, functioned with a level of coordination that rivals the most sophisticated intelligence operations in history. Documents long hidden in sealed archives confirm the movement of assets, the funding of clandestine activities, and the utilization of disinformation to keep the truth buried. Surveillance footage, long considered lost or irrelevant, has been enhanced and reanalyzed, revealing figures whose identities match those of known operatives once under suspicion but never formally charged. These aren't vague insinuations or speculative connections. They are confirmed, precise, and documented facts that fit together with chilling clarity. Among the most damning revelations is the role of a covert subgroup within the intelligence community that had grown disillusioned with Kennedy's approach to foreign policy, particularly his resistance to further escalation in Vietnam and his attempts to limit the CIA's operational autonomy following the Bay of Pigs disaster. This group, operating under a codename only now made public, had already initiated plans to destabilize what they saw as rogue leadership within their own government. The killing of Kennedy was, to them, not a crime but a necessary intervention, a reset intended to preserve the existing geopolitical order. What adds another level of darkness to the truth is that their influence extended to law enforcement, media outlets, and even key figures in Kennedy's own administration, ensuring that any investigation would hit wall after wall of obfuscation. The involvement of organized crime figures, long theorized and often ridiculed as conspiracy fantasy, is now validated with concrete evidence. Kennedy's crackdown on mafia operations and his brother Robert F. Kennedy's unrelenting pursuit of organized crime bosses made the president a target. Meetings between mob leaders and intelligence operatives, once dismissed as rumor, have now been documented through recovered audio recordings and written correspondence. These documents reveal a chilling alignment of interests. The mob wanted vengeance and control. Rogue intelligence factions wanted a change in leadership. Both saw an opportunity in eliminating Kennedy. Crucially, the evidence demolishes the notion of Oswald as a lone wolf. Far from a solitary, unstable former Marine, Oswald is now confirmed to have been a pawn, an asset manipulated and monitored by handlers within intelligence circles. His connections to foreign embassies, his shadowy movements prior to the assassination, and his abrupt death at the hands of Jack Ruby now make sense within the context of the wider conspiracy. He was never meant to survive. His role was to serve as a distraction, a tool to deflect attention from the true perpetrators, and his death was essential to preserving the veil of plausible deniability. The Dealey Plaza location itself was chosen with surgical precision. The trajectory, timing, and positioning of shooters, now mapped with the aid of advanced forensic modeling, reveal a triangulated kill zone, impossible for a single shooter to execute from the Texas schoolbook depository alone. Newly surfaced footage taken from angles never before made public confirms the presence of multiple gunmen, strategically placed and coordinated via radio communication. This is no longer theory or suggestion. It is a reconstructed sequence supported by ballistic science and corroborated by witnesses who, for decades, remained silent out of fear or were discredited into silence. There is also confirmation of deliberate tampering with the original autopsy reports and the suppression of photographic evidence. Pathologists involved in the post-mortem were pressured into altering findings, and vital materials were destroyed or locked away. Whistleblowers who attempted to speak out were systematically silenced or had their reputations shredded. Even the famous Zapruder film, long heralded as the most critical piece of evidence, was tampered with to obscure the true nature of the fatal shot. Technological restoration has now unearthed hidden frames and anomalies that further support the presence of more than one shooter. One of the most unsettling implications of these revelations is the extent to which democratic institutions can be manipulated from within. The cover-up involved cooperation across government departments, media complicity, and a campaign of misinformation that successfully misled the public for generations. It demonstrates how narratives can be manufactured and protected not just by force, but by the subtle and persistent shaping of perception. It raises grave questions about accountability, transparency, and the true limits of executive power in a system that claims to serve the people. The ramifications extend beyond historical curiosity. They expose the vulnerability of democratic systems to internal sabotage and raise alarms about how easily a truth can be erased or rewritten by those with the means to do so. It also forces a re-examination of other political assassinations and sudden deaths during that turbulent era. Events previously seen as disconnected or unfortunate coincidences now cast under a new and deeply troubling light. As shocking as the confirmation of a conspiracy is, what amplifies the impact is the precision with which it was carried out and the ease with which it was hidden for decades. It reveals a disturbing proficiency in deception, an entire machinery designed not just to kill, but to control the narrative of that killing. The architects of the plot understood that the story told in its aftermath would shape public consciousness more effectively than any bullet, and they invested heavily in shaping that story from the very moment Kennedy's motorcade came to a halt. Even those within the system who suspected the truth found themselves outmaneuvered or crushed by institutional inertia. The congressional committees, independent investigations, and journalistic endeavors that attempted to uncover the facts were either undermined from within or guided toward pre-approved conclusions. Many researchers, authors, and investigators who sensed the deeper story were labeled cranks or conspiracy theorists, their reputations sacrificed on the altar of national myth-making. But with the truth finally exposed, the fog lifts from one of the darkest chapters in American history. The assassination of JFK was not merely a tragedy, it was a turning point engineered by those who feared the change he represented. His policies on civil rights, his push for peace during the Cold War, his intent to reevaluate the Federal Reserve, and his challenge to military-industrial power made him not just an elected leader, but a perceived threat to deeply embedded interests. The confirmation of conspiracy doesn't merely vindicate decades of suspicion, it transforms how this event must be viewed in the timeline of American democracy. It was not just the death of a president, it was a rupture in the nation's political fabric, a moment where power proved it could operate in shadows and enforce its will with impunity. Kennedy's murder was both an act of violence and a demonstration, a message to any who might dare to disrupt the status quo. The implications are enormous, not just for historians, but for citizens today. Knowing the full truth of the JFK assassination reshapes how current and future generations must understand the relationship between government, truth, and power. It calls for a reckoning with the mechanisms that allowed such a conspiracy to occur and survive undiscovered for so long. It demands renewed vigilance, a commitment to transparency, and an acknowledgement that even the most sacred institutions are not immune to corruption when the stakes are high enough. And yet, there is also a sense of clarity that comes with truth. Though painful and deeply unsettling, knowing what happened in Dallas that day gives weight to the struggle for justice. It restores dignity to the searchers, those who refused to accept easy answers, who endured ridicule and rejection for asking the right questions. The revelation does not erase the crime, but it names it, defines it, and ensures it cannot be forgotten or denied any longer. The mystery of JFK's assassination has loomed like a shadow over American history, an unresolved trauma embedded in the national psyche. Its resolution does not bring closure in the traditional sense. There is no comfort in discovering betrayal at the heart of democracy, but it brings understanding, and understanding is power. For too long, citizens have operated under a version of history tailored for consumption rather than truth. That changes now. The veil has been lifted, the deception exposed, and the conspiracy confirmed. What remains is the responsibility to learn from it, to guard against repetition, and to recognize that in the balance between secrecy and democracy, the cost of silence is far too high. The solution to the JFK mystery is not just an answer to a historical question, it is a turning point in the collective consciousness. It demands that people not only reassess the past, but interrogate the present with sharper eyes and stronger resolve. It proves that no matter how deep the cover-up or powerful the conspirators, truth, though delayed, can still find its way to light. And in doing so, it honors the memory of a leader whose life was taken not by fate, but by a fear of change he was brave enough to embody. The revelation that the JFK assassination was the product of a coordinated conspiracy rather than the act of a lone individual has fundamentally shifted the axis of political awareness. With the veil lifted, attention now turns to the intricate infrastructure that supported such an operation, exploring how a complex machine of influence, control, and surveillance could have existed not only undetected, but embedded within the very institutions designed to protect the Republic. The sheer scale of cooperation required reveals a sobering truth. This was not an isolated act of treachery, but an orchestrated demonstration of clandestine power in its most unrestrained form. What makes this operation particularly staggering is the level of foresight involved. The conspirators did not act impulsively or emotionally. Every detail of the plan, down to the motorcade's route, the removal of security personnel, the manipulation of press access, and the timing of witness placements, was crafted with surgical precision. Forensic reconstructions now highlight a series of subtle but deliberate interferences in the security detail that day. Agents who were reassigned without clear reason, changes in seating arrangements that exposed Kennedy more directly to the line of fire, and a surprising breakdown in communications within the Secret Service ranks. These were not coincidences. They were calculated measures, introduced to maximize vulnerability. Equally chilling is the strategic use of the media to precondition public perception. Prior to the assassination, a quiet campaign had begun to discredit Kennedy in select outlets, framing him as reckless on foreign policy and indecisive in matters of national security. These narratives, now traceable to operatives linked to the same networks involved in the assassination, were designed not only to soften public support, but to justify the transition of power afterward. Within hours of Kennedy's death, media channels appeared strangely synchronized in their messaging, emphasizing national unity, dismissing early reports of multiple shooters, and focusing public attention solely on Oswald. This level of narrative control, executed so swiftly, illustrates the depth of the media manipulation and the anticipatory planning behind it. Meanwhile, newly unearthed records reveal just how deeply the conspirators infiltrated institutions that were supposed to ensure accountability. Select members of the FBI and CIA were not merely passive bystanders. They were active participants in containing the fallout. Internal memos show instructions to destroy or alter files, discredit witnesses whose testimonies conflicted with the official story, and monitor the activities of any citizens showing too much interest in independent investigations. There were even attempts to fabricate connections between Oswald and foreign governments, intending to frame the event within the context of Cold War fears and deflect suspicion away from domestic sources. The involvement of military figures adds another layer of complexity. High-ranking individuals within the Pentagon had grown increasingly frustrated with Kennedy's reluctance to escalate military engagements abroad. His resistance to a full-scale invasion of Cuba and his secretive negotiations toward nuclear disarmament were seen by hawks as signs of weakness. Communications now declassified suggest a silent consensus among certain military strategists that a leadership change was imperative to preserve American dominance on the global stage. These officials did not pull the trigger themselves, but they facilitated access, intelligence, and post-event protection that ensured the plot's success and its secrecy. More disturbing still is the confirmation that psychological operations, commonly used in foreign interventions, were deployed domestically in the aftermath. Disinformation campaigns, carefully planted stories, and the strategic use of credible voices to mock alternative theories created a climate of ridicule around those who questioned the official version of events. These tactics not only marginalized dissenters but reshaped public memory. For generations, skepticism itself was stigmatized, allowing the false narrative to entrench itself into textbooks, documentaries, and even public monuments. That distortion of collective memory was no accident. It was a continuation of the operation, ensuring that the truth, even if discovered, would be met with disbelief. Another critical revelation is the extent to which international players were aware or complicit in what occurred. While the assassination was a domestic affair in execution, certain Allied intelligence agencies had advanced knowledge that a transition of power was imminent. In classified correspondence, foreign leaders expressed concerns or even subtle approval depending on their geopolitical position. Some were warned to prepare for changes in American policy posture. These fragments suggest a deeper web of diplomatic quietude around the event, a tacit agreement to look the other way for the sake of strategic alignment. The implications here are profound. The conspiracy, while American in origin, was sustained by a global culture of realpolitik. The newly verified presence of alternate shooters, professionals with military or intelligence training, reshapes the timeline of the shooting itself. Acoustic analysis and enhanced imaging now confirm gunfire from at least 3 different locations, including the infamous grassy knoll, the Daltex building, and the textbook depository. Each shooter had a distinct role, creating a fail-safe in case one missed. This structure confirms the operation's military precision and the absolute unlikelihood of any rogue element improvising such a lethal sequence. The retrieval routes, escape plans, and suppression of local law enforcement interference were as tightly coordinated as the shots themselves. The manipulation didn't stop at the physical scene. Within hours of the assassination, control was exerted over key investigative bodies. The Dallas Police Department found itself sidelined, its evidence seized or redirected. Federal agents arrived with predetermined authority, collecting materials and interviewing witnesses in ways that would later be shown to omit or edit vital details. Eyewitnesses were coached, some outright ignored. Others later revealed they had been threatened into silence. This deliberate obstruction of justice ensured that the official narrative could be written before the facts had a chance to catch up. The role of Jack Ruby, often dismissed as an unstable nightclub owner driven by grief or patriotism, now emerges in a new and sinister light. Financial records and new testimony tie Ruby to individuals directly connected with both organized crime and low-tier intelligence operations. His access to police stations, his sudden appearance at the exact moment Oswald was being transferred, and his erratic behavior afterward all point to a desperate cleanup measure. Oswald was silenced before he could talk. Ruby's trial, bizarrely truncated and frequently interrupted by claims of illness or confusion, ensured that he never provided a full account of his actions. The pieces now confirm what many suspected. Ruby was not an aberration. He was part of the script. A major part of the enduring impact of this revelation lies in the way it reshapes America's myth of innocence. The Kennedy assassination has often been painted as a moment that shattered post-war optimism, but it now reads differently. That moment wasn't just a loss of innocence, it was a direct exposure of how fragile democratic governance can be when power is allowed to operate without accountability. The belief that America was a beacon of transparency and justice died in Dealey Plaza. though most didn't know it until now. What replaces that belief is not necessarily cynicism, but a mature, hard-earned realism about the complexity and danger of unchecked authority. This revelation also forces a reconsideration of how history is written and who gets to write it. The institutions responsible for preserving and disseminating historical records, archives, universities, museums, and government agencies, have all played roles in maintaining the false narrative. Not always maliciously, but through a culture of deference to official stories and an aversion to controversy. That institutional conservatism becomes, in retrospect, one of the greatest shields the conspiracy had. By refusing to engage deeply with dissenting views, the historical establishment contributed to a long, deliberate miseducation of the public. Moreover, the successful concealment of this conspiracy for so long speaks to a chilling efficiency in how information can be filtered and replaced. This is not just a story about hidden files and altered reports. It's about cultural conditioning, how belief systems are shaped through repetition, authority, and emotional appeal. The cover-up wasn't just operational, it was psychological. It played on the human need for closure, the comfort of believing in a coherent system, and the fear of confronting betrayal at the highest levels. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the JFK mystery? Will this proof change public belief? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.